What up, everybody? Just got back from watching Oppenheimer, and this movie is 3 hours long. Um, I'm gonna start off with the positives right away. I might do a spoiler review of this movie. I'm not too sure. I got to think about it. Next couple of days, I already have a review for something else, so I might do a spoiler review. I might not. Everyone might already know what happens. A lot of people know the real life story already, so I'm not too sure. It was very interesting walking into this movie because I know nothing about Oppenheimer. I have seen a few videos on YouTube from a couple years ago, just scrolling on YouTube, and I did know who he was, but I didn't know what he was known for. Like if you said the name, I kind of knew the name, like I knew the face and everything, but I didn't know exactly what he did. So after I saw these trailers, I was intrigued. Obviously, I would say I'm a Christopher Nolan fan. I haven't seen every single movie, but obviously the Dark Knight trilogy is great. Really like Tenet, even though there was some very confusing moments, just like in this movie. But overall, Christopher Nolan knows how to do practical effects, he knows how to do a good story, and he knows how to build up intensity really well. One of the best ever. Um, Start off the positives. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. This movie is not a bad movie, even though I do have a few negatives that took away from the experience a little bit. Overall, this is a very much so a great movie and a very great technical achievement. I didn't know until afterwards that Christopher Nolan said they didn't use any CGI, so that made me think like, okay, well I know, is there any? Did they actually use a real bomb? And I did some research, and apparently they made their own um, sort of bomb. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I didn't read too much into it, but they somehow made something safe enough that actually would explode on set and not hurt anybody in the process, which is fucking insane that they pulled that off. And you can tell when you watch the movie because the explosion literally is 100% real when you look at it. It's crazy. Um, this movie kind of has like a documentary feel to it, and I like it a lot actually. It didn't feel like I was watching all these big name actors in a movie. It felt like they owned the fucking characters, and I felt like this was real life. I think Christopher Nolan did a perfect job at that. And I wasn't really expecting that going in. I thought it would feel like a movie, but it didn't whatsoever, in a good way. It felt so realistic. The acting obviously is great. Cillian, I don't know how to say his name, Cillian. I seen him a bit in Pinky. I seen him a bit in Pinky Blinders. Sorry, I got a cough. And I didn't finish that show, but from what I saw, he was really good. Um, Everyone's gonna be talking about him, but his character is like top-notch acting, really good, steals the show. But I think Robert Downey Jr. got the upper hand on this. Cillian Murphy stole the show in his own way because he is the main protagonist. But Robert Downey Jr., after coming out and saying a couple weeks back, ever since he's been Iron Man, like after that, it feels like he's lost his capability to actually perform and act like he used to. And I honestly was not going into this movie looking for him to be the standout. And in my books, he is. I put Cillian Murphy in second, unfortunately. But not to say he didn't do good. He was fucking brilliant. I loved it. But Robert Downey Jr. just brings this intensity to his character, and he starts off just so forgiving and nice, and later on he just gets some twists and turns, and that's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna ruin it, but his acting is on another level. I haven't seen him so intense and just vulgar and so chewing up the scenery so much. Yes, he did when he was Iron Man, but this is a lot different. Really great. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how else to praise it. The more I think about this movie, I like it a lot more than I did like leaving the theater. It's definitely one you got to watch on second viewing. The sound mixing isn't the best, and I'll get into that after. But overall, this is a great technical achievement. Special effects, not even special effects, it's real effects. And acting wise, getting this big cast together. And one of the best things about this movie, this isn't a spoiler, it's in the trailer, but you all know Albert Einstein's in the movie, and a few other political figures, not even political, there is a few, but there's a few mentions and there's a few characters like Albert Einstein there in the movie that we kind of grew up and we know, but they really do feel like they are normally a part of this story. It doesn't feel like, oh, Albert Einstein, Oppenheimer were this in the same time period here. Like they met each other, and they didn't obviously in real life, but they definitely did. But the conversations that they have, it feels so real. Especially the actor that played Albert Einstein was terrific. He really portrayed the, he really did look like a bum. He didn't take care of himself. He was, and you just felt bad for him in a way, even though you knew he was a genius. It was just really smart how Christopher Nolan did it. It didn't feel like kind of like fan service in like a Marvel movie in some way. And that just made the experience so much more realistic. Every single character has a super important part of the story. The only negatives I have, it's a 3-hour movie. I felt 3 hours. But my problem was the pacing. Everything moves. It's literally like Tenet. It moves so fucking fast. And it's really hard to get that breather and actually process what's going on. This is a very filled with like dialogue heavy movie. I would say 2 hours of this movie is just dialogue. And then you get the whole bomb scene after that. But everything else is, there's some really dramatic, intense moments that are really good. And then there's some scenes where you don't know what they're saying because the music in the background is louder than the dialogue, just like in Tenet. I don't know why Christopher Nolan does this. But I would watch it again just to put it on with subtitles because there was a lot of conversations I missed out on. Definitely a few things that I have a feeling I missed out on that are important to the story. So I do want to watch it again. Not in the theaters, though, when it comes on DVD because there's no subtitles in the theaters. But when that bomb goes off, whew, I didn't even go to an IMAX theater. I was in a normal theater. That motherfucker was loud. I go to the movies all the time. I think this is hands down just the bomb by itself. I think it's the loudest theater experience I've ever had, which is crazy. It does drag at the beginning. I didn't find the beginning to be too interesting. It took way too long to get to the point. I kind of saw where it was going. Yes, he goes to school, blah, blah, blah. And then you kind of get to the second act, and you're in like the second half of the second act, and that's when it really starts to pick up. It's like 50-50 on the build-up side. There's some parts that are really interesting and really well done. Some are just not interesting conversations, in my opinion. But overall, great acting, great cast. I can't believe Robert Downey Jr. did what he did. Great character work. Cillian Murphy did a great job of Oppenheimer. And you really kind of feel for him at the end of the movie, but at the same time, you don't. You think him as a hero and a villain. And I'm really happy that Christopher Nolan isn't praising this man, but he is at the same time. I understand it. But by the end of the movie, you knew what he wanted. You knew why the government did what they did. And it's really worth watching in the theaters. But just be ready for a lot of dialogue. It's a fast-paced movie, switching scene to scene, but it's mostly dialogue. For the most part, it was interesting, but there were some parts I was bored and I was drifting off a bit. But other than that, I would give this I think I would give this an 8 out of 10 for sure. Those 2 points just lose for that. At the beginning, I was just worried. I was like, I really hope this pays off by the end. And it did. Couple complaints doesn't make this a bad movie. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll let you know about the spoiler review. Let me know what you think about Oppenheimer.